Hello, welcome to my channel. My name's Matt, and today I'm going to be going over my signal chain with this here Cole Clark Angel.
Yes, it's Future Matt here, just cutting in to say I realised I said the name of my guitar wrong. It's the wrong model that I mentioned. It's not an Angel, it is a Fat Lady 2. I'll be overdubbing that in when I need to.
Cole Clark
Fat Lady.
With a humbucker through my live rig, which is the Line6 Helix Floor. I get many questions and compliments on the sound that I get when I play live, acoustically. Do quite a number of acoustic gigs in and around Australia, mainly with Aussie country artist by the name of Hayley Jensen. If you haven't heard of her, go and check out her music. She is one of the best in the biz over here. And her most recent album, which was released in August, end of August, spent a bit of time at number 1 and number 2 in the ARIA charts. So definitely worth going and checking her out. So I've been using this guitar probably 3 to 4 years, and I bought it because it sounds great and looks wonderful. I get many compliments on the sound that I get when I play live, particularly in just the acoustic shows. And so I'm going to show you through HX Edit what I do to get the sound that I get, which is what you heard in the beginning there. So I'll take it back to just the acoustic sound. Now with this guitar, we have 2 outputs, separate ones. So here, two output jacks. One for the acoustic pickup system, which is a 3-way system where you've got a piezo underneath the bridge here that deals with a lot of the low end. There's a sensor on one of the braces or the face, I think back here, but I'm not 100% sure where they put it. But that picks up more kind of the mids, and then there's a condenser microphone inside as well that picks up all the high end. So on the preamp side of my guitar here, for the acoustic section, there's basically a little mixer here between the piezo and the face. So you can pick a blend of where you want that. I have that just sitting 2/3 piezo and 1/3 bridge sensor. The microphone I also have about 2/3 on, and then my volume I also sit that about 2/3. And then the EQ, pretty much flat. I do boost the bass just a little bit. I notch out the tiniest little bit of the mids and add a tiny little bit of treble. And then the other cable is the humbucker. And this particular humbucker is a Lola. It's a factory model, this. I haven't modified the guitar in any way. This is a model that they sell. And that runs on a separate wiring system. So volume knob, tone knob, it has a split. It goes from parallel to series. Everything on full and the push-pull pushed in. And then this toggle switch, which I always leave in the middle because that leaves both the acoustic and the electric pickups working together at the same time. If I switch it to the rear position, that's just the acoustic sound. And if I switch it to the front position, that's just the electric sound. I always have the acoustic on. My basic sound is going to be just the acoustic sound. And then I layer in the electric sound underneath by use of the volume pedal. But let's have a look at the blocks that I'm using in the Helix. So you can see I'm running 2 separate paths. The guitar input I use for the electric pickup because it's got the impedance settings in there. And then the aux input I use for the acoustic things because this is more designed for instruments with preamps in them. So active basses or active guitars, or in this case, this is an active acoustic pickup. So let's have a look at the acoustic side of things. I use the studio preamp first in the chain, and it just gives some added harmonic loveliness to the sound. This is the sound. Now, if I switch that off, this just doesn't quite have the same richness that it does when the preamp is engaged. So that is just the guitar signal going straight through into the reverb and EQ and compressors. And that is it through the studio preamp. Keep the gain on about 5.3, polarity normal. I leave the EQ section alone because I've got a couple of EQ blocks after that. And in this case, I've chucked the level on 10 and the sensitivity to the mic setting. In terms of effects, just got a dynamic hall reverb, relatively medium sort of length reverb, but I don't have the mix too high on it. So here we've got the mix at 23%. I don't like things drowning in reverb, but I do like a nice tail, so it's still there, but it's subtle. And then after that, we've got an EQ section, little cut in the lows, little cut at 780, also a little cut in the highs. Yeah, we put a low cut on there at 31 Hertz just to get rid of any low end rumble that might be coming out. 18.3K high cut, followed by the deluxe compressor, medium to longish attack with a short release. So letting all the transients through and then letting go as soon as it does kick in. You can't see it, but on my screen, I'm getting about up to 4 dB of gain reduction there. And then just boosting that level back in by 2. That's if I really hit it hard and getting the 4, is sitting usually around 2-ish. Yeah. And then after that, another EQ. So taking an even more low end out, and there's a reason for the placement of this EQ after this little mixer knob here. And then highs, 11K. Taking that out just a little bit, so that's a little bit of zinginess. And the high and low cuts are out. There we go, just adding a little bit more level in there. And so generally I send that to the front of house engineer. He doesn't have to do much. He might have to do a little bit of EQing for the room. But a pretty good starting spot if he needs to take anything out that's starting to take off. Then he can do that. I generally find, or have found on larger stages, that this guitar will start to take off at around 220 Hertz. Been on a few stages before where this A string will just start vibrating and playing itself if there's a big wedge in front of it. But generally, we don't play that loud, so it doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. Now, let's have a look at this bottom path here. I use a split crossover. So from this initial signal that's coming in, goes through the studio preamp, and then after that, before it hits the reverb, it sends everything that is 115 Hertz or below, so the low end, down into this bass octave. I really don't use this very much, but sometimes on some songs where it's kind of driving, big driving chorus or something like that, I'll kick this in and it adds in a low octave on the lower notes of the register. I think up to 115 Hertz roughly takes it up to about this E. You can still kind of hear it there, but if I go any higher, oh, it's still there. So you can hear it starts to disappear. It's gone by the time we get up to there. Now, the reason I don't use it too much is because you can hear sometimes that tracking gets a little bit rumbly, and that is also the reason that in this EQ block here, I've taken away some of that lower end underneath 110 Hertz. It can get a little bit blah, 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 blah when you're playing it through a big PA with subs. After that block there, I've just got a Fender Bassman. And you can just hear that little extra texture there. Now, let's get on to the other bit of spiciness. This top line, which is the humbucker pickup. This section through here, I don't touch it in terms of I've made a sound just to provide an electric wash underneath the sparkly acoustic side of things. And if I just play that sound by itself, it's pretty uninspiring. Turn this on and you get this. So by design, it really doesn't have that much clarity to it. It's very mid-focused. There's not really much high. There's not really much low-end stuff going on. But what it does is it just fills out underneath the acoustic sound to just add some texture, some body, and some weight. And if I play you that without acoustic and then with, you can just feel that little bit of extra energy that comes through. So go through here, just start with a compressor, about the same as the compressor on the acoustic channel, which is about 2 or 3 dB really. I then hit a gain knob because it's quite quiet. So I just pushed it a little bit further. I could have done that with the output gain of the compressor, I guess, but I decided not to. And then that pushes that into this amp, which is the Cali Texas channel 1, which is the Mesa Boogie Lone Star, of which I use in my day-to-day life. If you can see just over my left shoulder, there's a fan sitting on top of my Mesa Boogie Lone Star just there. So I generally go to this amp quite often for sounds because I know it and I like it. I've used separate cabinets this time. Stereo, I believe. So we've got an orange 2x12 and a Mesa Boogie 4x12. Both vintage 30s by the looks of things. 4x12 is panned slightly to the right. The 2x12 is probably panned slightly to the left. There we go. We've got a bit of EQ, high cut, low cut stuff going on. And then that feeds into my volume pedal. So I have the expression pedal on the Helix set up to blend this in. Now, I can't take the credit for this idea. I watched another Aussie artist, guy called Anthony Snape, who is actually a Cole Clark artist and has his own signature model. We played a gig with him one night and he was using the same sort of idea for what I'm doing here, but he likes to roll it in from the volume knob on the guitar. I didn't want to do that, so I stuck it on a volume pedal, but the concept is the same. I've put a couple of delays on. So the Elephant Man, got that twice, set at 2 slightly different levels in terms of delay times. The first one, 229 milliseconds. The second one, 369. Plenty of feedback on both, about 70%. And then the mix for both of them around 25% as well. So the tail of the sound just drags on underneath. But it, again, doesn't get in the way. If I then take that out, you can hear the delay carries on, but it won't get in the way of the acoustic. So if I... and then as I take out the electric, it just gets out of the way. Got it again by another hall. I guess I made it shorter because the delays kind of compensate for that. That is my signal chain for my Cole Clark all Blackwood
Fat lady.
with a humbucker. I use a very similar patch for when I'm doing this live, but in the band scenario. I just don't have it as a stereo sound. So this sounds great acoustic, this particular patch, because it's in stereo when there's just myself and Haley or someone else on stage. Really, particularly in a smaller room, it sounds great because the delay is just washed between the two speakers. It makes a one instrument show sound much more dynamic and bigger than it actually is. But when we're in the context of a full band, we've got other players on stage, I just keep it mono because there's no need for a stereo thing going on. But the principle's the same. Nice, crisp acoustic sound with a washy sort of electric sound that I can bring in underneath. One of the main songs that I use this on for Haley's live stuff in the band scenario is a song called This Heart Ain't Big Enough. And it starts off with this lovely acoustic part, which goes something like this. And then as you go through the verse, the whole first verse is just an acoustic sound with some really light sort of washy drums and things underneath it. And vocals. And then when we get to the chorus, that's when I bring in the electric sound. And it doesn't hit hugely either. Again, it's a really nice wash. I do this beautiful... That brings in the chorus. It all opens up a little bit. It sounds much bigger. There's only me on stage doing it, which is pretty cool. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed that little walkthrough of my setup. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a great week. And I hope to see you again soon.